You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
You're tuned in to NightVision Radio, exposing the truth, one secret at a time. Prepare yourself as we explore the shadow worlds of suppressed history, secret knowledge, forbidden religion, and shine a light on the conspiracies to keep it all from us. Welcome to NightVision Radio.
Hey everybody, welcome to NightVision Radio. Happy you could join us this evening. My goodness, I'm so terribly sorry we got off to a late start. The technical problems were just out of this world, if I can use that term. Anyway, it was really wild. Tonight, we had a double bill for guests this evening, and we're just having technical issues getting our UK guest. So we're going to go forward with our one witness who is doing so much work and has done over the past several years. But before we get to tonight's show, I want to remind everyone to please, if you are a music lover, or especially if you are a songwriter or you know a good songwriter, our friends over at returntofthetroubadour.com are having a wonderful songwriting contest. They're looking for a song that uplifts humanity or uplifts the person, and they're willing to pay for that. And the first prize, I know, is an amazing collection of gold coins valued at $5,000. So that's not chicken feed, people. Anyway, we're going to have some celebrity judges on the contest, and it's going to be really great. So please go over to returntofthetroubadour.com, and also go to Return of the Troubadour on Facebook and like them, please. They're good people, and they're doing good work. They're just trying to promote positive change in the world. Now, my guest tonight, I was originally going to have on Larry Warren, who's a former U.S. airman who was stationed at Bentwaters Air Force Base, Royal Air Force Base in England in 1980, when some of you may be aware of a very strange incident that happened over a 3-day period of time, some very bizarre occurrences, including lights and, according to witnesses, possibly alien beings or some sort of beings in any case. And my guest who we were able to get on tonight, John Burroughs, has been at the heart of this issue since the very beginning. He was also an airman at that time. He is today a retired sergeant from the Air Force, and he was stationed at Bentwaters. And John, thank you so much for coming. I apologize I couldn't have your cohort on with us tonight.
No, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was on the line when you guys were trying to work it out. It's hard. It's hard to get people from the UK, and the other thing is that this is a new world as far as communications, and Skype is it. So,
well, it's really odd because and I don't want to get conspiracy minded here. I'm not generally. But just the problems that were occurring as we were trying to reach them just seemed really bizarre, even to the point of my Skype was messing up and I couldn't reboot it. So that's never happened. I've been on Skype all day. I was talking to a good friend of mine in France this afternoon, and it worked just absolutely fine. And when I kept trying to pull it up, I just kept getting a black screen, and it's could not launch. So I don't know what's going on there, but maybe that's a coincidence. But anyway, it was an odd one. But John, for people that don't really know about the incident, which may be quite a few now. I mean, I remember shortly after it happened, hearing about it. I was working at UFO Magazine, so naturally we were covering the story, and that was my first encounter with Larry Warren, that was already back in the early 90s, maybe around 1990. So that had been 10 years on. But he was in Southern California at the time. And I've always thought that it was the most amazing case, mostly because, certainly because of what happened, but mostly because of the witnesses that were there, who were all servicemen. It was a security detail. I mean, these you would think would be sort of trained observers. It wasn't like a bunch of guys out, drinking a Guinness, in the field and seeing some light in the sky, was it?
Well, no, I mean, we were, the very first night when the incident happened, we were on duty, and no, we weren't drinking, smoking, or anything else. It was about halfway through the shift. So, I've always said it's interesting. Matter of fact, I talked about it. I just came back from the UK. We have more training than the everyday guy working on the street, but at the same time, we weren't really trained. We didn't have training in how to deal with what happened to us. And what I mean by that is the experience we had was something that you don't deal with on a day-to-day basis, even in security or law enforcement. So.
And can you just talk a little bit about what it was that did occur? I mean, I know it started with lights in the forest.
Well, okay, yeah, sure, I'll go into it.
Or did it?
No, how it started was we came on duty Christmas night, right before midnight. So early in the hours of the 26th, was his Boxing Day over there. Around 3 o'clock, I was riding with my partner, Bud Steffens, doing a perimeter check when he saw it first, and he later said to Sergeant Peniston that it landed, it didn't crash. That's in the book. But basically, he saw something strange, that was in the forest or coming into the forest. I didn't see it actually when it first came in. What he did when he got my attention, I looked forward. I saw some strange lights in the forest. From there, what we did was we debated a little bit about what we wanted to do, but it was close enough to the base that we thought we better check it out. So we eventually departed the back gate at East Gate down the service road that led back to Bentwaters. I got out of the vehicle. When I got out, things just didn't seem right to include. There was like static electricity in the air, and it was close enough to the edge of the forest itself that we decided we better get back up to the gate and call it in. Called it in. They sent down the security supervisor to check it out also. He saw the strange lights, and from there contacted CSC and updated them on what was going on. A decision was made to send 3 of us into the forest, himself, his rider, and me. We departed the base, leaving our weapons with Sergeant Steffens, the other law enforcement patrol. We got out into the forest. And then we went as far as we could, actually, and as we got stopped in the vehicle, we had to exit it. We started going in the forest towards whatever it was. We finally got close enough to it that as we came up over this berm down into an opening in the forest, the whole forest area lit up. I hit the ground along with Sergeant Peniston and Airman Kabansak. Sergeant Peniston was the closest to it, and this is where we differ as far as what went on. All I remember was the area getting really bright, a bright white light hitting the area, and then it seemed to dim down. Whatever it was lifted up into the sky and departed out towards the coast. Sergeant Peniston obviously has gone into the fact that while all this was going on, he was able to get up, walk around it, snap pictures of it. He actually touched it, had a binary download. He's even said as far as he tried to move it. And then after that, the lights had dimmed it during that point, and it went up through the trees and departed out to the area. We did pursue it a little bit further into the field. Actually, when I just was over there, I reconfirmed it was about 5 miles before we were called back to the base.
Now, you said you each had different experiences. Well, I mean, I think that's always the case, isn't it, in an eyewitnesses to an event. Some people see some things, other people see other things. But do you think that it was meant to be a different experience for each person, or do you think some people have sort of embellished on what occurred? I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot.
That's a good question. The thing is that I've done a lot of research over the last few years, and there's some declassified documents that would explain why we each had different experiences. You know, not just the three of us the first night, but through the whole event. You know, it has to do with, it's basically in the MOD documents that we're dealing with a phenomena that's able to affect how you see it and everything else. So no, I don't think anybody's embellished. I think they've done the best that they can to explain what they saw and what happened to them.
Oh, good. Well, so, and do you think that people were experiencing different feelings, different sensations, actually seeing different things, or were you all pretty much seeing the same thing, but then the experience changed because, like, say, you know, Peniston did go up and touch it, so that changed his experience.
It's in these documents that when you get close to this, it can affect, it affects you not only in memory and time and everything else. It's in these, declassified documents and parts of conduct.
I'm sorry?
I mean, a lot of people said, well, stories have changed. Well, I mean, there's little factors that you can say that people have said differently in different interviews and stuff. I'm not arguing that. But ultimately, there's a lot of people, not only in the first night, but the third night, that have actually different memories and perceptions of what they saw and what they dealt with. And by all means, that's one of the things that I caught on to and have been working on. And that's why I think it's important. Hopefully someday we can all sit down together and go over it, because I think if you go into the papers and everything else, we'll start making better sense of it. I don't know if it'll ever happen. It probably won't. But I mean, everyone over the years, like I said, a lot of different people saw the same thing, but they perceived it differently.
And now, when you describe what happened, that was the first night, right?
Yes.
And this happened over a 3-night period.
Yes,
what was going on during the day at that time?
No idea. We worked midnight shift. When we got off in the morning, we went back out and looked at the area. I went home and went to bed. I went back up there. I did go back up there Saturday morning, found out something happened Friday night, and then we all went out in the woods. There's me and two other guys went out in the woods Saturday night to try and get a better idea what was going on, and that event on the third night had already started. So I have no idea what went on during the day on Friday overall, Saturday or Sunday, other than I know through reports after we went out there, they brought the British police out, they looked around in the area, and there's no doubt because of what was going on, they were looking at this further, but I can't say exactly what took place.
Now, this was investigated by the U.S. military, I would imagine, and by the British military, and also by the local police, right?
Well, yeah, the police were called out right after, while we were out there on the first night. They showed up as it was ending, and then they were called back out later on Friday morning. But as far as what their involvement was after that, like I said, the third night when I went out there, that Saturday night and the Sunday morning, I was off duty, and I had no idea what was taking place until I got out there. So I have no idea the logistics behind who was exactly there. I know we were out there, but there may have been some other people also involved. To a matter of fact, there's reports from locals that say the British police had some roads blocked off and everything else, but I wasn't privy to seeing any of that.
Mm-hmm. And after that first night, how did you feel the next day?
Well, from the point on, it didn't seem right, and it was something I'd never seen before. And like I said a few minutes ago, it was like, yeah, we may have training, but it wasn't like that kind of training as far as dealing with something that bizarre.
Right.
So So, I mean, I couldn't explain it. I mean, flat out couldn't explain it. We knew we had a problem going back because we were out in the forest for a couple hours, and at one point they lost contact with us for approximately 45 minutes or longer. So we were going to have to do some explaining, and we just couldn't. We didn't have the answers. We just saw something strange, didn't know how to deal with it, and didn't really want to deal with it. And at least I didn't. I, like I said, I was a young kid that was enjoying life, and this was something I wasn't expecting to have happen. And there's really no logical answer for what I saw and what we were dealing with. And then the times in the military, this kind of stuff wasn't a good thing anyway, because I mean, it was already, unexplained, which led to UFO stories coming out and stuff. And when you can't come in and explain what happened, it just doesn't, it doesn't bounce well, period, for anything that's going on.
Now, there were nuclear missiles on that base, right? Or
I won't go into what the ordnance were at the base.
Oh, I see. Are you still under some kind of directive for confidentiality?
Well, all I can tell you about, and I'll answer it this way, there are certain things, no matter where you're located at, that you're not supposed to talk about. So, and that doesn't end, just because you leave the base. So you do sign paperwork. Right. And it's called national security, and you have to follow those rules. So,
but isn't that base now gone?
Yeah, the base is. Yeah, the
so
base
it's
is
not
closed.
there anymore. So it wouldn't be any kind of a matter of national security, or would it be still?
I mean, national security covers a broad spectrum of things, but ultimately, that when you're at a base, if there's a directive put down on certain things involving that base, no matter whether it closes or not later, until whatever is going on there is declassified, you're not allowed to talk about it.
I understand. My son was in the Air Force for 10 years, and he worked in a vault inside a vault, and I still don't know what he did.
Right.
So I totally get it. But now, okay, so you went out and you were working at night, obviously. This all happened at night. You went back. Eventually, did you get some sleep after the first incident, or were you just completely discombobulated?
No, I was able to eventually fall asleep. I mean, it was the first day of break. We do, sometimes I stayed up, sometimes I went to sleep. I stayed up for a while and stuff, and then later on in the afternoon, I went to sleep. And I slept through early in the morning on Saturday.
And then you got up, and you were back on duty again?
No, I was off duty. I went up to the base Saturday morning, just got up and went up to the base. And I went up to the desk when I got up on the base, and the guy told me that something strange had happened the next night, Friday night and Saturday morning. He was kind of joking around with me. And at that point, I was like, you're kidding me. I took a look at the report. He briefed me kind of what was going on, gave me an idea of what happened. And that was when I really was like, wow. I mean, when we went back out there Friday morning, we saw some damage to the area. So it was like, it went from what I saw, which was just lights, to there had been some damage, and then you hear some more stuff went on. Now I was even more intrigued, and I said, well, I went over to the dorm and I found a couple of my friends I was working with, and I told them what happened, and we decided ourselves, not knowing something else was going to happen again, to go ahead and go out there and try to get an idea of what we were dealing with. I mean, Colonel Hall likes to say when he went out there to debunk it, I wasn't going out there to debunk anything. I was just going to go out and try to make some sense of what was going on, what had happened to us the first night, and then it happened again, which normally doesn't happen. You don't have strange occurrences 2 nights in a row, let alone 3.
Exactly. Now, I mean, the reason I was actually asking about the missiles was because, now I don't know if this was true or something that was just going around at the time, but I can remember hearing that some of those things had been disabled by whatever, or they felt by whatever this experience was, or this event was.
Well, there has been stuff put out. I mean, Robert Hastings does a lot of work on the connection with UFOs and nuclear weapons. And he supposedly uncovered some officer that wouldn't give his name, but said that there was some kind of activity that took place with the ordnance, which caused some problems. Colonel Hall is going a step further and said he talked to that guy and he believes him. Colonel Haltz also at different times mentioned, and I think he did at a Hastings conference, that something beamed down into the weapons storage area and caused adverse effects on the ordnance there. But I mean, as far as that goes, I have no direct knowledge of what did or didn't happen as far as if anything did directly happen to the ordnance or not. I'm just basing it on hearsay and what I was told.
Yeah. And, okay, so you go out there the day after the first incident, and you see some damage done, you see some evidence that something did occur out there in the forest. And the forest where this occurred was actually adjacent to the base, right? It wasn't on the base. It was like public land.
Right. I know it belongs to the forest and the British government. Now, I'm not sure. I believe it belonged to the Forest Division back then, but I don't want to say it did and it didn't. But basically, it would have been British land, yes, public or federal. We say federal, but belonging to their government is one of the two things that we were off base, and that's one of the points. We never would have been allowed to go off in the first place on the first night, because it was still off base, except for the fact, which I didn't bring up, was the fact that during all the conversations going back and forth on how to deal with it, reported and everything, they actually checked in with radar, and they got a couple confirmations from a couple different things that they saw something on radar disappear just outside our perimeter in the forest. So after some consultation, the shift commander made the call to send us out into the forest to see if an airplane or something crashed, because it was lost on radar. Otherwise, we never would have left the base. There was not a direct threat at that moment to the base, but the fact that something may have crashed is the reason why we were allowed to go out and investigate it.
Interesting. And then, okay, so the second night, you stayed on base?
No, what I did was, I'll split it up. The first night we came on duty on the 25th. The incident happened early in the morning on the 26th. The second night, we went on break Friday morning after that. We were off Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The second night, the shift that was on swing shift the night we were on mids took over mids. Well, they had an incident where they saw strange lights. From what I was told, the shift commander and the on-duty flight chief, Sergeant Ball, who ended up going back out there on the third night, also went out to investigate. At one point, there were some blue lights that they were observing. One of them went through the vehicle the shift commander was in, shut the vehicle down, which freaked her out. It upset her, and she went home. She was called relieved to duty. She went off duty the rest of the night and wasn't on duty the next night, because she should have been out there on the next night. And there's some people that have confirmed this besides what I heard, that they were on duty that night, and they actually heard the shift commander out there on the radio acting scared. There's been an investigation done on that. So that was the second night. The third night was on Saturday night going into Sunday morning. And there was already a couple people out there. Sergeant Nevels and Lieutenant England were already out there snooping around. And per Colonel Conrad, the way Sergeant Nevels tells it, and then more lights showed up. They came back onto the base, notified there's a wing party going on, notified them, our commander, the base commander, and the wing commander, that something was going on again. Colonel Halt was picked, and he picked a few people to go out into the forest. Colonel Halt's words are he was out there to debunk it. So he went out there, but after he was finished, it changed his whole world of reality, according to him. So.
Wow. Now, at the time, there were a lot of people, a lot of airmen, a good number of people who were witnessing this. And did they all talk at the time, or was there already, was the lid already being put down on this thing? Were you told not to say anything, or were you asked what you saw?
Well, for as far as it went with me, I mean, when we went up and saw the shift commander right afterwards, he told us that Friday morning we're probably gonna have to write something down, but we went on break. Monday, I was informed to write a statement, which I did, and Sergeant Penniston and Airman Command Sec also wrote some. I think the flight chief, the security flight chief, and the shift commander wrote statements each on the incident because they had to justify why we left the base. So, over the years, I'm not sure how many other people wrote statements. There's been different people saying they did. I didn't see them. I didn't say they didn't, but those haven't seen the light of day. The ones that saw the light of day were the shift commanders, and the security flight chief, myself, Sergeant Pennison, and Airman Command-Sec. I know for a fact what I remember was we went in, wrote our statements, saw Colonel Hall, went into Colonel Conrad's, eventually ended up in Colonel Williams' office, handed the statements over. Sergeant Pennison did a basic he told each level, he was the one doing the talking. He was a guy that was in charge. He was the staff sergeant. We were just airmen, and we were happy to let him do that. That's the way protocol was anyway. And but there's been different people, that said they were brought in and, interrogated. Sergeant Pennison, their hypnosis brings it up. So there was definitely investigation went on afterwards, and there's no doubt it appears some people were interrogated, including possible sodium pentothal or amethol were used to try to uncover what happened to us.
Wow. And okay, so we're now after the second night. You must have surely just totally had your mind blown, because it didn't just happen once; it happened again. And coming up on the third night, were you sort of expecting something, or were you looking for it by this time?
Well, no, like I said, it blew me away that something happened again, and I found out about it. And what we were going to try to do was simply go out there. Not like I said, I don't use the word debunk. I just said, well, first night we got caught up in it. What I mean by that was we were on duty, something happened, we had to react. What I was hoping to do that night was to go out there and calmly walk through everything. And it's not like we were out of control the first night per se, but you had to react to something. You didn't have any time to think about it or prepare for it. So we went out and did our job. But that on the third night, what I was planning on doing was going out there, going real slow, step by step, being able to survey the area, look at the whole area, and take a hard look at what we were dealing with. And but when I got out there, the stuff had already started. They were already having stuff going on. So yeah, so I wasn't expecting anything again. And like I said, even after the first night, my viewpoint on it was I couldn't explain it, but I wasn't happy that it happened, but I didn't expect anything to find out the second or third night would happen. And now through the years, I found out stuff had happened before our event. People had seen stuff. Different people have come forward, and then there's been stuff going on to this very day. Strange activity in the forest out there. Still there, appears.
Do you think it has something to do with, sort of the geophysical makeup of that area for some reasons? Just like, people claim that certain areas are power spots, and there may be, telluric currents that are very powerful in certain areas, things like that. Do you think it has something to do with that area, or do you think it has something to do with the airbase?
Well, it's still going on. So obviously, if it's still going after the base closes, well, I think there's some other facilities.
Unless there was some kind of contamination from the base. Well,
no. Yeah. There's what's interesting is the investigation that I've been conducting and going on, and I just found some more stuff out when I was over in the UK this past weekend. Is there's one thing, and I'll kind of try to break it down step by step. Number one, there was facilities out there that were conducting they're called special access programs. They were clearly working on military weapons. Now, in saying that, does that mean I'm saying what happened to us was all military? No. What I'm trying to say is it started back earlier on. Cobra Mist was located there. It was a highly developed over-the-horizon radar they were working on, and they had problems with it, and it didn't work right. And they spent a lot of money, and I don't want to give a figure and be wrong, but it was a lot of money back then. And they couldn't get it to work right. And the reasoning behind it was there was inland interference. They brought a team from SRI, Stanford Research Institute. Are you still there?
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. They brought a team in to look at the cause of it, and they identified an inline problem. They shut the thing down, which, like I said, they never got it fully operational, but they kept Stanford Research Institute there working on some stuff. There was a facility that's still there today called Mars from Heath. Now, it was BT, it was British and American. The American part's closed, but the British site's still there. So they were working on stuff, and it goes really deep into this to include the fact that, you know, some people said they were taken to an underground facility. And what's interesting is there was a couple of people that have commented it's not possible. And I'll name their names, Colonel Hall, Sergeant Pennison. Well, going back over there this last weekend, there's an underground facility there. And where it's at, it goes 2 stories down, and there's tunnels going out into all different locations. Now, the problem was they claimed it was the water table, which is true. There's a water table there, but the underground 2-level facilities there, the tunnels are starting to get water in them. And what happened was that they obviously, the system has showed there were pumps that were keeping the water out now that it's not active, because this particular facility is closed down too. But there's tunnels there, and there's an underground facility, yet people said it wasn't possible, but it is. There's an underground facility there, and it seems, and it could very well tie into all this from all the research I'm doing. So what do you say? You know, I mean, and do I think it was the ordinance? No, I think that what I think through my research, looking at Condyne, looking at these documents, the fact of the matter was there was 2 guys down there from the MOD already looking at that area, at the phenomena that was there. They had identified that area as a hot area. They were down there doing the research when the incident happened. And then there's all this stuff in Condyne, which is over 400 pages long. That area is a hot spot, not because of the bases itself, but because of the area. Now, could the facilities outside of Bentwaters-Woodbridge been involved with it? You bet. Could they have been doing something to cause some of this? Yes. Matter of fact, if you go into Condyne, one of the things it says is when this stuff shows itself and things are going on, there's a high amount of possible meteor activity and stuff. Over that 3-day period, there was humongous amount of meteor activity to include the first night. There was all kinds of meteor activity going on, and it triggers some of this stuff on top of the area itself.
Wow. Why would you think that would be involved? I mean, what do you see? Do you see any meaning behind that? Have you figured out anything of why that would be?
Well, a part of the Condyne report says they're weaponizing it, not just America and the British, but all these countries. They're aware of the phenomena, they're aware of its capabilities, and they're looking to take advantage of it and weaponize it. So that would be one of the reasons they keep it quiet. Since they knew that was an area, they have facilities there that could have worked on it and done some work around it, trying to figure it out more. So the answer is yeah. I mean, yeah, they're working on it. They were working on it then. They're still working on it now. There's all kinds of stuff going on involving this phenomena. And it just doesn't tie into that area, but it does appear to tie into other areas of the world too, yes.
Well, have you drawn any correlation between the events that happened at Bentwater and the reported events that happened at that ranch in Utah, now known as Skinwalker Ranch, used to be called Sherman Ranch?
That's a good question. That's out of the blue. Yes. The interesting thing is that it was clear the government was studying that up there, and then Bigelow came into it, and they were looking at the effects on both the animals and personnel. And yes, some of the descriptions that come out of Skinwalker do go back towards Project Condyne and what we were dealing with. And it does appear that there's a lot of places in the world that have these effects, you know, and with the phenomenon itself.
Wow. I just reminded me of it because it sounds, I don't know, it sort of smacks to me of like interdimensional travel or something like that. I don't even know exactly why I say that. And of course, I'm no expert in any of that. But that's just what it reminded me of. And then I was thinking about some of the things that we're seeing and the activities, you know, that they claim were going on over at Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, I was able to talk with the Shermans before they actually moved away from the ranch right after the story kind of broke and before the sale was complete to Robert Bigelow of the ranch. And, I mean, to me, you know, they sounded like they were telling the truth. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time I've been fooled, but, you know, it did sound like they were very nervous about what was going on. And some of the things that they described remind me of some of the things that you and others have described as happening there at Bentwaters. But who knows? And of course,
I think there is a correlation to it, and there's things right now that I'm real careful about what I'm talking about. I've got a lot of stuff going, and you know, irons in the fire, and I don't like to go into it, you know, unless I can back it up. And I'll give you an example. I started doing FOIA on not only FOIA with in America on this, and did it through attorney Pat Friscona on that, but I did FOIA with the MOD. And the interesting
that's Freedom of Information Act for anybody that may not know.
Right. And what's interesting is that through the MOD, I went after Condyne and the working papers and stuff. And what's interesting, number one, is the MOD likes to come out and say a couple things. They said it about Rendlesham. They've said it about UFOs in general. And what the interesting findings is number one, they changed from UFOs, UAPs, I think it was early 2000. Off the top of my head, I don't have the documents in front of me. But they were going with UFOs for a long time, and they changed it to UAPs. But what they did was they came out and they said about a year ago they were done. They'd released all their documents. Everything that they had was out. And they had a spokesman do it through the National Archives, which is the name of Dave Clark. And he came out and said, you know, everything's out. Let everything rest the way it is, somewhere along the lines. Like, here you go, folks. Take a look at it. There's really nothing to it. Don't worry about it. The MOD's got nothing to it. Well, through my FOIA, I found out otherwise. And what I'm saying is they're holding on to at least 18 more files on this. I got them to admit it. And I've been talking about it. I did a little bit in the States. Nobody in the States was able to get anything out of it. But right before I went over, sent another press kit out. I sent it to you. And magically, the MOD now has admitted that they're holding at least 18 more files. And what people don't understand is, and they got these people out there, and I don't understand it. They act like they don't have clearances. They don't know what they're talking about, other than there'll be a spokesperson who'll say, well, that's all the files. Well, how do they know? Because, first of all, when you redact stuff, it's classified. Now, the thing is even the MOD says in this release, they're going to have to redact the stuff first that they don't want out in these files. Then they'll release the rest of the files, which means even then, technically, they still haven't released all the files. Because when you have anything that you redact and you hold back, it's classified, which, by the way, most of the working stuff in Condyne is at least classified defense, which, oh, by the way, this is not of defense significance according to the MOD. It's just blatantly wrong, and you need to take a hard look at that. They're classifying stuff that they won't release as defense, but UFOs or /UAPs are not of defense nature or worry. Then why is this stuff all classified defense? And I've got proof of that, and I got them to cave, and they've admitted it now. But when they first told me it was going to be sometime at the end of this year, now they pushed it all the way back into September of next year. And the interesting thing is when I got this exchange with them, they didn't really want to admit to it. I think what happened was the way I was approaching it, somebody got caught off guard and admitted to one thing to cover something else, and he shouldn't even admitted to that. Then all of a sudden somebody way above got into the middle of this. But now at least they finally admitted that they lied, and it's embarrassing. And yet no one seems to care. No one seems to worry. Though once again, they're claiming nothing. There's nothing to UFOs, UAPs, and there's nothing to them being defense significance. But everything that you read about this and everything that you do is tied into defense and is classified defense or in other different ways that all lead back to defense and national security.
That's crazy. Yeah, but what is their stated reason why it's classified if it's not pertinent to
they
defense?
They don't have to tell you.
Mm.
They just give you. It's a section. They have different things that they label it. Some of it has to do with different countries. It's classified for that. But the majority of this stuff is classified defense to the UK. Well, so how could this all stuff be defense? Because what this guy did, he was a private contractor. It was hired. And actually, it's funny. Nick Pope was actually, when he was at the MOD desk, actually worked to get this done, and it was a scientific report done for just certain eyes only in the UK, and they were doing a study on UFOs and UAPs, and how they related and stuff. And he was looking at all the documents they have, and like I said, some of the documents that he was looking at are still classified defense. Well, now if you're doing a study on UFOs, UAPs, but it's not of defense significance, why would you still classify anything of defense significance, number one? And what I also believe, and this is the only thing I'll go out in a little line, I don't have the total proof yet, but there was a whole bunch of policy file or documents that disappeared from the DIS files on Rendlesham. It was magic. They did all these FOIA releases, right? Boom, boom, boom. And then there was a section within the Rendlesham part that when they came up to release it, they were gone. They were destroyed. And as Nick says, they didn't follow protocol. They weren't supposed to destroy them, number one. If something did happen with them, there's supposed to be a paper trail showing what. That isn't there. So they're missing. What I'm pretty sure of is those are classified. And they just said they were missing. And we'll never see them. But it's interesting, within the Condon report, the only incidents talk about is Rendlesham Forest incident, and it goes into details of how we were exposed to radiation from the UAPs, which goes back to my condition itself.
And yeah, I wanted to ask about that, about what types of after effects have people had. I know there has been radiation exposure. I know Larry said that he had tested positive for radiation exposure, and you had something similar. Is it that way for others too? Have you had health issues?
I did. I just had open heart surgery, and the interesting thing is that I had to have a valve replaced. And right after the incident, I wasn't feeling well, and they found a heart murmur. And I couldn't have got in the Air Force with a heart murmur. It's just, you're not allowed in. That's one of the disqualifiers. I got the physical showing I came in clean bill of health. I developed right afterwards. And then when I got out in 88 from active going into reserves, I got the physical showing I got the heart problems. But the interesting thing is it appears, and I say appears, is pretty, all the information I've received from the senators looking into this and people looking into it is that my medical records are classified. And the VA won't release them. They won't answer FOIA. Neither will the DOD.
Your medical records are classified.
Yes, they're classified.
To you?
Yeah, I can't get them, which is a violation of HIPAA law. And they won't release them, and they won't answer. It started with Senator Kyle, retired, and he's the one that pointed out they're probably classified. Then it went to Senator McCain's office, who they also feel it's classified. And Senator Sanders, the head of the VA committee that I brought into this, came back and says, you need to go to the classified record sections to acquire on your records and continue to have Senator McCain work with you on this. There's been all kinds of lies and deception to Senator McCain's office from the VA. They now magically, it's been going on, and they offered to do a different look at it. And then when the whole packet was submitted, now they magically lost some of that again. They won't answer FOIA on my records or what's going on. They're violating federal law, but ultimately what it comes down to is you have to go in and sue them to get anything. That's just the way our government's working nowadays anyway. So, and then even FOIA, like did FOIA with the State Department, they admitted holding records on the incident, which would make it an international incident, yet they won't release them because they belong to the Air Force. Contact the Air Force to get permission to release them. We go to the Air Force denies there's any documents. So once again, we'd have to sue. Then you go to the CIA. Are you holding any classified documents on the incident? Then we can either confirm or deny if we're holding them. I mean, the incident is classified still to this day. It's still classified within the MOD to this day. It's of defense significance. They're clearly weaponizing the weapons out there. They probably were working, the facilities there, they could have been working on understanding the phenomena right there. There were people down there from the MOD looking at the phenomena. They came in and looked at it afterwards. There's 400 documents out there showing that this stuff is classified. So whatever happened to us is still classified to this day, defense, and probably never will see the light of day.
And what you thought was going to be released this year, now you found out it's going to be like September of next year. Was there any stated reason for that delay?
that just it takes them time to do it. I mean, they have to go over and redact their stuff for 3 months. Then they have to go to the archives with it. From there, the archives looks at it and gets it together to be released. I mean, this was early on, like in March, so it should have been April, May, June, and 9 months. Should have been end of this year, early next year. Now they've pushed it all the way back till September 2015 at the earliest. And what's interesting was able to, when I went over there, it was interesting. I did a big press release kit. It went to all the press. And what's funny was 2 things happened while I was over there. Number one, they did a BBC did a thing on the fact that they built this thing called the Craft of Unknown Origin, and that Jim saw, that he drew, and they're going to put it in the forest. Now, it was interestingly introduced in the BBC talking about that on Saturday when I was there. Now, my press release went out, and one of the British newspapers, the day I left, ran an article saying the MOD finally admitted that that they're still holding 18 files back. So they got caught lying. Yeah. They got caught lying, but that's okay, no big deal. You know, we just lied to you again, and so yeah. But you can trust us, anything we tell you, and that's where I go down the line with disclosure. It kills me, and if people are offended by this, maybe they should be. No one trusts the government anymore, but they really believe at some point in time they're going to tell us what the hell's going on with whatever, you know, UFOs, UAPs, the phenomena, whatever it is. They're going to come out and tell us the truth on it. And until they do, we're not going to go anywhere with this. We have to wait for the government to tell us. And that's one of the things I go into, confirmation. And confirmation has already happened. There's more than enough proof that something's going on, including different statements by high people in the government and generals, you know, that I don't have in front of me right now. But they've clearly stated enough to show most people should understand something's going on, to including Edgar Mitchell saying that we've been visited by the phenomenon, that it's real. And he was, you know, he would know. He's worked on these committees and stuff, and he did a great interview talking about it. So something's going on, but people are still waiting for a government that no one trusts anymore to tell them exactly what's going on, until they totally believe something out of the normal is going on, and you know, and everything else. And I just find that hilarious. I mean, like, yeah, we're going to trust the government, not for anything else, but they're going to tell us the truth about what's going on with us.
Hi, you're back with Night Vision. I'm your host, René Barnett, and I'm talking to John Burroughs, one of the witnesses to the Rendlesham Forest incident, and one who has spent the last 30-plus years looking into the incident and investigating all the evidence and the documentation. And he's gotten quite a ways, but he's also had quite a fight getting some of the information out. Now, John, as you know, we have a live chat room going during the show, and we've been getting some questions through. If you don't mind, I'm going to put some of those.
Give me like about 3 minutes to recap a couple things, and I want to bring up a couple points, and then
absolutely be my guest. You are my guest. Okay. Go right ahead.
All right. Well, to start with, I'm sorry Larry couldn't be on tonight, because you know there's been all kinds of issues going on over the years, and Larry's taken the brunt of the heat from everybody. And you know, he was the guy that took this on from the beginning, because without him going out there, sticking his neck on the line, talking about all this, and working through a couple people, they got the memo out and then the tape out, this would never even be in talk about today. And then there's a couple ladies that I met over there, and one that didn't show up, but Dot Street and Brenda Butler were working on this from the UK side, and so was Jenny Randalls. But Larry, you know, he took charge of this from the beginning. He took a lot of heat for it, and you know, we were talking off the air.
He was the original whistleblower. I
hate the word whistleblower. I know it's been devalued, but he
uses it. So.
He was a whistleblower in defense, but he was an experiencer. He was somebody that experienced something, didn't understand, felt it wasn't right, it was being held back, and went out and got it out to the public. And yeah, that's a whistleblower in a way, but you know, it's more than that, because you know, he was trying to figure it out himself, and he still is to this day, along the rest of us and stuff. So yes, technically he's a whistleblower, but he's also a guy that did his best to try to understand this, get it out to the public, not as a whistleblower per se, because whistleblowers are a little different. You know, I mean, yeah, he knew it was wrong, he wanted it out, but he was doing it also to help a lot of people. And you know, and it's sad tonight, once again, for some reason we couldn't get him on, you know, and it would have been nice for him to come on here and talk about some of this stuff. And hopefully someday maybe we can get on a radio show together. We've tried several times, and for some reason each time it doesn't work out. So
That's the weirdest thing, because, I mean, it's never happened on this show. It's never happened on any show I've been in. I've been doing this show for about the past 8 years, and I've never not been able to get hold of the guest. And it was like, it was problems from his end, problems from our end, and we just couldn't make it happen, and it was just the weirdest thing. And I'm so disappointed because, I met Larry, back in probably 1990 when he was out here in Southern California for a while. And we were covering that story for UFO Magazine at the time. And I just thought, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing. As far as witnesses, it's just, absolutely, the best. Now, I know, Larry, of course, with Peter Robbins, wrote a book called Left at Eastgate. And have you written a book on this subject, John?
Yeah, we just had a book released this spring. It was in April. Nick Pope was the lead author, and then Jim Pennison and I were co-authors, and it's called Encountering Reynolds from Forest.
Oh, right, of course.
And it's a broad scope of our views, Jim and I, and Nick's involvement. And it goes in the condign a little bit, which is what I wanted to hit now. What I wanted to say, I talked about earlier about FOIA and the MOD holding stuff back. Well, I want to go into that. One thing I forgot to mention also when I was talking about the VA problems, they actually altered my service records. And I've got proof of that. And then McCain's office finally got to turn around because they denied my initial claim based on the fact that they had no medical records for the time frame, or I wasn't in the service from 79 to 82. And they actually altered my service records. We got that changed, but I wasn't there. So that's why I couldn't have been injured or sick from it. So, I mean, this is a pretty deep thing that they've gone to that extreme to say I wasn't even in there. So
wasn't that? I mean, I'm remembering back in time now. Wasn't that around the same time that the Berlin Wall was brought down?
No, it was 1980. Reagan hadn't even officially been sworn in.
Oh, that's right. There was something going on, though, and I remember... It
was a solidarity movement in Poland's going on, and there was stuff going on in Ireland with the IRA and stuff. But the biggest thing that was going on was the solidarity movement in Poland, and there was it was edgy right there with the fact that Russia might invade Poland and stuff. But, that was...
Wow, I remembered, because I remembered at the time hearing... someone saying that Larry wasn't really there, that he had gone to that, he was gone for that whole weekend, and so he couldn't have been a witness. So it sounds like sort of something similar happened to you as well. So, except they actually changed your records.
They altered my records because that's why they denied my claim. But the interesting thing was Senator McCain's office was able to finally get that changed. But then here comes the problem now. They still won't do anything or answer anything about my medical records. So, and that's still going, and we'll see how it goes. But I wanted to go into the FOIA. When I talked to Nick, and let him know that this was going on and I was going to release a press release, he gave me an interesting quote. He said, "I know for sure that not everything has been released because by the MOD's own admission, some files, documents, it's no big deal." All right. And then I went into one other thing I asked him. Okay. All right. I asked him why, because Condign came out and a lot of researchers were able to look at it and they blew it off. They didn't really go into it. And it's just now people are starting to get with my work and some of the things Nick's talked about. Maybe we need to go back and readdress this. And the thing is Nick says, Nick feels in relation to the media, Project Condign Firework ran to over 460 pages and busy journalists working on tight deadlines don't have time to wade through such vast amounts of material. This leads to what's fairly known trick within governments when you have to release something difficult. Because of the Freedom of Information Act, bury the embarrassing bits deep in a lengthy report and put your key messages up front in the executive summary, or better still, in a covering press release with an attention-getting quote. The chances are that's what a lot of media outlets will run with. Material is thus hidden in plain sight. It's a classic example of the old adage that the best place to hide a book is in the library.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
or in the Vatican archives.
He's himself, who's used the I make fun of him a lot. He's on the fence. I say he's a fence sitter, you know, and even in my presentation the other day, I says, you know, he sits on the fence. He's on pension from the MOD. He has to be careful because he had a clearance and he knows some stuff he probably can't talk about. But even he's telling everybody, look, folks, you know, there's a lot more to what's going on here, and they're holding stuff back. You know, not only in Rendlesham, but they're holding stuff back on the whole thing, you know, and there's a lot more to this. And maybe people need to take a little more time to look at this and not scan through something, oh, it's no big deal. So that was the points I wanted to make, so I'd be happy to answer questions.
Great. Okay, because we got a bunch here. Thanks so much for clearing that up, though. I mean, it's also interesting.
Yeah.
I wish we hadn't got a late start. But you know, I've had several people ask about the possibility of missing time, and I guess you're talking about, especially on that first night, certainly there was 45 minutes that you said you could not account for.
Well, that came up partly too because when we were out there, what happened was that they couldn't get in contact with us. When Jim and I came back from being out in the fields, we both noticed that our watches were 45 minutes slow. So, yeah, there appears to be missing time. And when you have an interaction with this phenomena, part of the experience of having it with it involves missing time.
So your watch actually missed time also?
Well, yeah, it was slow. It was 45 minutes.
Yeah.
More.
Interesting. And what about the idea that time travel might have been involved? I think we mentioned, you know, interdimensional travel. Is there a possibility that it was us, you know, coming back to check ourselves out or to warn ourselves or something of that nature?
Well, what I'll say about this, and I've been tied down to, I'm committed to time travel. I'm not. I'm committed to the fact that we had an involvement with this phenomenon, and that I'm not sure yet. I'm still working on it. I've got some insight into it, but I haven't got enough to prove it. Is that there was something there. We dealt with it. It was a phenomena. And I'm not sure where it came from or what it was, but it was, and it took place. Jim, I know under hypnosis for sure, you know, time travel comes up. He says it's from the future. We've got to get it right. He goes into all that stuff. But, you know, the interesting thing is this, and all I can say is I think this is to be determined, not only on the binary itself, but the possibility of time travel. And I talked about this over the weekend, and I keep forgetting what the movie is. There's a movie that was done in 1980. As a matter of fact, it's pretty strange, but it was about a nuclear aircraft carrier. And what this carrier did was go back in time. It went through an anomaly. And what they did was, it was the Nimitz, and they used this, and it was a good movie, and a lot of people knew what I was talking about. But what I wanted people to stop and think about was this. Let's forget about the anomaly now, whether it can or can't happen, whether in the future we'll have it. It's going on now. But the interesting thing about the part of the movie that caught my attention was, besides some other things, was the fact that just something going back from 1980 to 1940, because it went back to right as Pearl Harbor was happening, how the people in 1941 or 94, observed this technology that was only 40 years difference. And the fact that that aircraft carrier alone could have ruled the entire world and defeated the Japanese fleet on its own. And that's just something that would be a 40-year difference in technology. So if in fact the time anomalies are possible, or in the future they become possible, and something from the future came back, it sure would tie into possibly explaining some of what happened. And, and like I said, I only say this about time travel is this, that Jim is more along that lines. Like I said, I believe we dealt with the phenomena that I'm working on. Jim's working more on the binary in time travel now, not me.
Now, the Jim Peniston, binary code, this is what he said was downloaded to him when you touched the craft, right?
Right.
And what do you think that it means? What does the code mean?
Well, that's the thing. It was at least nice that the book put the codes out, and there's a lot of people looking at it. Some people are tying it to crop circles. Some people are tying it to ancient times. Some of these sites definitely had ancient, where civilization either started or was, there way back. There's a guy by the name of Gary Osborne that's working on this. Unfortunately, the part of what he had worked on that was going to go in the book didn't make it. They got cut, and he's going to put something out later from what I misheard, and that would help clarify some of this. But I mean, there were different sites around the world, and again, I told people over the weekend, give it a chance. You know, I mean, crazier things have happened in this world, you know, that 20 years before, like I say, you go back to Star Trek and technology. In the 60s, they made fun of warp drive and stuff. They're working on warp drive now. There's articles out that the scientists are working on it in warp drive, which would lead someday to it happening. I don't know how close they are because that's all classified. But just the fact that they're working on it now, it would have been made fun of in this. It was made fun of in the 60s as science fiction, but now it's possible. So who knows? And I think there's a lot of good people looking at this, and even in time travel, I know Dr. Mallett's working on the possibility of time travel, and he's been out in the open with that. So let's see what happens. You know, give it a chance, and you know, maybe do some more research before you're so critical on everything all the time.
That's right. That's right. Stranger things have happened, and you know, this is something like a binary code. You know, is so not up my alley or area of expertise in any way. So I have trouble, you know, understanding that, but it doesn't mean there's not something to it, you know. So I think it's best to keep an open mind as much as possible.
I mean, part of the problem with this case is that anytime anyone says anything that's out of the realms of possibility or a little bit to the left or right, I mean, they get attacked. I mean, Larry said beans and they attacked him. And I tried to explain to him over, you know, when we were over in the UK that right away beans means aliens. Doesn't necessarily mean. But one of the things in the initial CNN report, Sergeant Ball, who's blacked out, said we saw something inside the blue lights that looked like it could be, you know, I don't want to quote exactly what he said, but he implied it could be something to do with, you know, something, you know, which automatically goes right back to aliens. Colonel Halt's been on the record over the past few years saying we're not alone, and you know what they dealt with is an intelligent control that was ET based. So you know, as soon as you go into certain areas like this, you get attacked right away. You know.
Well, when I heard Larry talk about it, even in old recordings, he usually says people. I saw these people, you know, or something, you know, he says, I don't know what it is, but, you know, he doesn't call them aliens. He doesn't say that they're from outer space or another planet or anything. He just says, I just know what I saw. You know,
right. And I know, and like I said, this report, I'm telling you, the scientific and technical memorandum explains why that's possible. And again, I mean, over the weekend, Richard Dolan saw my work, and he admitted he never had looked at these papers. You know, I mean, so this has been overlooked. And the interesting thing is, it's time they take a closer look at this report and hold the MOD and the American government responsible for this, because there's a lot of answers in this. And like I said, I've got them right now. They've admitted they haven't released everything. So what is it? Is it 18 files? Because they initially said 5. Then I went after them harder, and they said there's more. Then they eventually got to 18. Well, what the hell is it? Are they really holding back, and what do they know? But ultimately, it leads down to what they feel is national security, even though it's not of defense significance, because they're all trying to weaponize it. And you know what? Weapons, no matter how you spin it, they're used against other people. And when are we ever going to get to the point where we stop doing that? You know?
Oh, Lord, I don't know. Don't get me started on that one.
Right. Yeah.
Because that is, I don't understand. I mean, hopefully, you know, it does seem like some people are evolving, but, you know, obviously there's so many wars and crazy stuff going on around the world that everybody's not getting it, that's for sure. Yeah. But let's see. How about another question from the crowd here? I think this one kind of got answered. Did any of the witnesses suffer physical ailments or other noticeable changes after that night? Well, you talked about their heart problems. What about other people? And also, what I was more interested in almost than any physical problems that you might have had was any changes in, you know, your psychological state, or even in your own understanding, you know, of your own philosophy, your own ideas of philosophy. Did those kinds of things change? Did these things, do you think this changed your life? Obviously, you're still talking about it 30 some odd years later. So
well, I mean, And to be honest, early on, I mean, I would say it didn't change my life that much, other than I started not feeling well and I had some issues. But I mean, I kind of left it alone. I mean, when the memo got released, it did change my life, but I went on with it. I retired from the Air Force. I have a child. I have, actually I have two stepkids in it. I got married and have two stepkids and a child. I mean, Caden, that's, was born, but what I'm getting at is I went on my life, but as the years went by, you start hearing more about it and all this other stuff. You start to hear people do these things that you're like, no, that isn't right. This isn't right. Nah, they don't know what they're talking about, and then my physical condition has gotten worse. And then the more I look at this, the more I get into it. Yeah, I think I'm having a more understanding on life itself and, and what happened to us. So yeah, it's affected me, Does
it affect the way you look at, just sort of the family of man at all? Do you feel more akin to other humans of every race and belief in ethnicity because there seems to be this other going on? Or, who was it? What was it? Reagan that said something about, we would all pull together if we came under attack from extraterrestrials or something like that. Did you have any feeling like that, or sort of more of a sense of belonging to the human family?
Well,
that's kind of a pure question, but
no, I mean, it's an interesting question, but I mean, I don't think most people do that. I think they just try to survive day by day. And, the thing is that I do see society going down a dangerous path. And I mean, it's scary where we're going. I mean, I've kind of talked about it a little bit. There's a song out by Johnny Cash going by the book, and it's Revelations. The Revelations kind of describes where things are supposed to end up, where we're going to go and how it's going to happen. And if you really look at Revelations, and I don't understand it totally, but we're kind of heading down that path right now. And I don't understand why we have to live by something that was written totally. But and if you probably broke down society as a whole into different, groups, different countries, and all that other stuff, most people don't really understand why we're fighting each other. But they're told that they're supposed to, so it happens, and they go along with it and stuff. And I don't know where we're going, and I don't like where it's going. I don't like the way the Earth is being, is falling apart, and the fact that we're getting ready to possibly have a war. I don't know if we are for sure, but it sure is leading up to that. And of course, a lot of people say that's the Middle East is where it's all going to end. So, I don't like where we're going, and I don't think, I don't know people. I don't even think people understand why we're going that way. And it just seems a select small group of people are controlling everything. And I don't think that's right either.
And do you think that the events were controlled that night by people? I mean, certainly not possibly all the events that were going on, but the involvement of those that were there. Larry Warren seems to think, or expressed to me that, nobody was there by accident. And he feels like it was sort of planned who was there by possibly things that had happened to people in their earlier lives. Now, I can only guess, because he didn't say it, that he was talking about, I know at a young age he had observed a UFO or something like that, had some sort of experience like that, and lived in a house that was supposed to have been haunted. So do you think that people were assembled to be at that particular place? Do you feel like you were sort of chosen?
I mean, the first night, I don't think so. I think, if anything, this is what I'm working towards. I think that the meteor activity, I think the area itself, the phenomenon was known to be in that area, and meteor activity can trigger some of this. I think our government was well aware of this. There was an area in there because even the MOD had people down there looking at it. So could they have been working on something, knowing something could occur and all that? Yes. Do I think they expected us to show up out there? No. it was just the freak thing that we were where we were and we saw something. And the funny thing is, it may have been seen the next night or the night after. I'm not saying it wouldn't, but on our night, if we hadn't been down at the gate when we were, probably we never would have reported it, and we never would have been involved. Could they have seen something the second and third night? Maybe, but because of the first night, they were obviously watching the second and third night, which they saw something for sure. So we may never have known. Do I think that some of us may have been naturally drawn out there because what Larry says? It's very possible that something that happened prior could have led you out there. I mean, even I went out there another time. I was one of the few. Sergeant Ball was out there twice. It's been said I was the only one, but Sergeant Ball actually was out there the second and third night. But he was out there because he was on duty. I went out there once off duty, but I don't know. I mean, that stuff I'm kind of looking at, but it's and I understand Larry had an experience earlier, so that would make him feel that way more, and I don't disagree with it, but I don't ever remember having an experience prior to this, so I don't know, but it is something to look at. It's a good question, but I don't know for sure. I mean, so.
Yeah, it's just, what would sound to the very, very end of the show, and I had meant to get this question in earlier. Someone had asked about if you could clear up the idea of the lighthouse. There was a lighthouse nearby, and I know that people that were trying to squelch the story tried to say, they were just looking at the lighthouse. But it seems that so much occurred that it couldn't possibly have been that. But could you explain just real quick? We're down to the last 2 minutes. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick thing. I'm going to end with an interesting thing I got right in front of me. Okay, here's the deal. What we saw where we were at the beginning, we weren't even in the area where you could see the lighthouse. We went out further on to see if we could identify, as far as reestablish what we saw. In my statement, I say we went past Farmer's house, we saw a beacon, we followed it, identified as lighthouse. But at no time what we encountered earlier was a lighthouse. The second night, the second main night, which is Colonel Halt's night, on his tape, he talks about a beam of light coming down to his feet. I don't know. And then last but not least, in the MOD documents, okay, they talk about this, and I said this was the only thing they really talked about. This is the well-reported Rendlesham Forest / Bentwaters event is an example where it might be postulated that several observers were probably exposed to UAP radiation for longer than normal UAP sighting periods. Now, does it say anything about the lighthouse? No, it's a UAP that we were exposed to. So I think that throws the lighthouse down the toilet. You know what I mean? You can just kind of, AMI hypnosis, one of the interesting things is the person that was involved in the lighthouse theory said my hypnosis was real. And I didn't talk about a craft. You're right, I didn't. I talked about light, which is all I ever said, my statement and everything. But then when you go deeper into my hypnosis, which you're going to post later, it says some other interesting things. And again, nothing about the lighthouse. So if he's going to stake his reputation on the fact on that, how can he then turn around and then still stick with the lighthouse? End of discussion. I mean.
Yeah. So I was watching that old CNN special on YouTube today about it, and I think that kind of explained it pretty well. How it could not have been the lighthouse. I mean, it's possible just seeing a light first could have been the lighthouse, but then when it moved and it just was impossible.
You're listening
impossible.
Powerhouse.
I mean, did at any point in time did Colonel Hall on the third night? That's where he really tries to attack, and David Clark did too. Did they maybe see the blink of the lighthouse when they were moving around? Maybe, but how long does it take you to look at something and figure out what it is? Not very long. I mean, you know what I'm saying? You would. It wasn't what we saw, and I went back there since and have looked at the lighthouse when it was blinking, and I wouldn't have taken very long to figure it out. And the only reason why it took longer for us is we were farther to the right and we saw the beacon. And when I say the beacon, when I say we confirmed it was a lighthouse, it looked like a lighthouse, but I wasn't familiar totally with seeing the lighthouse up close. But when we got on top of the hill and looked down, it was a lighthouse. But that was nothing that we seen. We were going out there further to look at the area to see if we could reconnect with what we had dealt with earlier.
Wow.
So, and the lighthouses don't go up and down and shoot beams at your feet and all that. So,
no,
okay, I hope I
with
answered
that, I think you absolutely did. And thank you so much, John Burroughs, and witness to what's now called RFI, the Rendlesham Forest Incident in December of 1980. Sorry we couldn't have Larry on, but we're going to get him on one night. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hope you'll join us again next week.